Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to our newest Clients First Marketing and Communications podcast. I am John Clendenning, your co-host of On the Offense, and I am
I'm Jeff
buoyed
Baum.
by what's that?
I'm Jeff Baum. You talked about your co-host.
You are Jeff Baum.
Yes, yes.
You are the bomb. You are the bomb.
And you're whatever.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're getting sick of us by now, and we're going to keep on reappearing on your screen. But we've got great stories to tell, and that's kind of the basis of this broadcast. So I'll turn
That's
it over to my good partner and friend, John Clendenning.
right. We are going to talk about storytelling, but before we get to that. Um, we hope you're having a good week. We have not had a good week in Dallas. We have not. We've had a bad week in Dallas, Texas.
Very bad week.
Very bad week. Thanks specifically to the Dallas Mavericks and their still inexplicable decision to part with local hero Luka Doncic. I think, Jeff, it's fair to say that we have both been generally distraught all
Oh,
week,
absolutely.
and that we generally remain so, along with all of our fellow Dallasites. What do you think? Are you still?
I
Are you
I
still?
I totally agree, and the fact that it was announced at like 11:30 on Saturday night in the dark of the night, it was hard to believe. And in fact, I think we both thought it was an April Fool's joke, but it's not April Fool's yet. So
Well, that's
it's
that's what Luka himself.
highly, oh, it's just terrible. And I think people in Dallas are despondent. This guy is an icon here, and he was the logical successor to Dirk Nowitzki. So. Yeah, whatever. But tear our hearts out, post them on stakes.
That's basically what they've done, and we are speaking essentially on behalf of the entire city, right? Everyone is just so. So my stepson Harry and I are going to the Mavs game tomorrow. Believe it or not, I don't think Jeff did. I don't think I told you that.
No.
We are tomorrow. So we're recording this on Friday, February 7th. You'll see this posted probably midweek next week, the week of the 10th, midweek. So anyway, tomorrow is the Mavs' first home game since the trade. It was probably a good thing for them. And I wonder if this was part of the timing, Jeff, that the players were going to be on the East Coast all week. And so
Mhm.
they've been a little bit removed from this, probably good for them. But tomorrow's the first home game since the trade. So we're not really going to enjoy a basketball game. We are going to witness a spectacle. We want to see for ourselves, Harry and I, how bad it is, because there is talk of pregame protests outside of the arena. A GoFundMe has been started and funded up to the tune of about 16 grand to fund ad space on local billboards outside the arena for people to express their dismay. So we're just kind of interested to see what it's like, right? Also, it's going to be Anthony Davis's first game as a Mav. So part of it is like, well, is this guy worth all the hype? How do they look? We'll see. But we will see. Do you think they're going to boo Anthony Davis himself? That'd be harsh.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to do that. I hope they don't do that.
Yeah.
He didn't
Well,
ask for the trade.
he didn't ask for the trade. He's just kind of in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Wrong
So
place, wrong time.
now, those of you who are loyal Clients First podcast listeners, and that counts at least 3 of you out there, or is it 3 million? One of those two.
Not 3 million yet, but that's our aim.
Yes. When the next Nielsen's come out, we should be up to about 3 mil. But those of you who are loyal listeners know that I am big on props. And I have a prop here that is Mavericks related. And so you can see I've got my nice banker's vest on, I get a nice golf shirt. But when I go to the game tomorrow, as I normally do, I'm going to wear my favorite Mavs quarter zip, right? Which I usually do. It's got the NBA logo on the sleeve. Okay. But I'm thinking maybe what I need to do is cover up the logo. Do you think I should wear this to the game
You know what?
as a
I think
as a statement that the Mavs are dead to me because of what they've done to us. What do you think?
I like that. I think, John, that's the beginning. That's a good segue into storytelling. The story
Right?
here is you've abandoned them because they've abandoned you.
I mean, I don't even know what to say. We are all abandoned. So I don't know. We will see what I wear tomorrow. Um, all right. So besides venting about the worst trade in sports history, we are here to talk about something much more positive, which is corporate storytelling. We are in the midst now. We always like to have some sort of natural launch pad for these podcasts, something that puts, so we have context for the timing of when we talk about a certain topic. The timing of this one is driven by, and I challenge any of you out there to tell me that you already knew this was the case, but we are in the midst of National Storytelling Week in the United States. Did you know that before I brought that to your attention, Jeff?
No,
National
no idea.
Storytelling.
I had no idea. I
Join the
salute
club.
this.
So I looked it up. What is the goal of National Storytelling Week? There's four things. Number one, celebrate the value of oral storytelling. Okay. Number two, encourage people to share, listen to, and immerse themselves in stories. Okay. Number three, help people develop literacy skills. Now that's a little bit more tangible. Number four, help people feel empathy and escape. It sounds a little
Uh,
fuzzy to me, but
a little
now
fuzzy, but we're going to put some structure to it.
we're going to put some structure to it today. Who organizes it? Of course, none other than the Society for Storytelling. So there you have it. There's a hyperlink here in my notes. I'm going to leave it alone for now. Maybe I'll go look at it later. But happy National Storytelling Week to those of you out there in podcast land. It is also the beginning of Super Bowl weekend. And we have wildly missed on our last podcast in terms of predicting who would be in the Super Bowl. So I think maybe at the end of this, now that we know who's actually in the game, maybe we'll give ourselves one last chance to get this right, because we both predicted before the conference championship games that the Bills would not only be in the Super Bowl, but would win the Super Bowl. So don't ever take us to Vegas with you and ask for our help. So, all right. So Jeff and I saw National Storytelling Week. We thought it was a natural platform to leverage in talking about corporate storytelling, which it is I think, a relevant topic at the beginning of the year. And here we are in the first week of February, because the beginning of the year is often when corporations and other organizations adopt new brand platforms, and as a result, take on new storytelling to help drive growth throughout the year. That a lot of that happens at the beginning of the year. So we think it's a good time of the year to do this. And then, Jeff, I'm going to turn it over to you to tell us a corporate story in a moment. But maybe just a quick aside here. Jeff and I are clients first. We have recently joined the Plano Chamber of Commerce because we are technically based in Plano, which is a suburb of Dallas here. And when we introduced ourselves to our fellow members in our first meeting last week, we stood up and said, every one of you is a corporation. You might work for a mom and pop. You might work for a large company, medium-sized companies, a governmental entity, a nonprofit, but each of you works essentially for a corporation. And no matter what kind of business you're in, even if you're small, we have a couple of roofing companies in this room with us, right? Small, mom and pop, true small businesses, but we also have some much larger businesses there. Our point to them was every corporation has a story. And as a way to introduce ourselves to them, we help you build your story, develop your story, build out some content to support it, and then make sure you are executing against that story consistently over time. They give new members a chance to kind of introduce themselves and talk about their values. So I do believe that that's true. I think corporate storytelling is important for all businesses. But Jeff and I are going to tell some stories here about some stories we've built and executed against for mainly larger companies,
Yeah.
for which corporate storytelling is critical as a way to keep them on track, help drive growth, build awareness, build the brand, et cetera, et cetera. So with that, Jeff,
Well, I'd
let's.
add a word to that, which is engage, engage them. They become part of that story. But let me just tack on a couple things from the Plano Chamber of Commerce. It is a really diverse group of local businesses. And
Yeah,
one of the guys there runs a company that cleans up crime scenes. They literally specialize in cleaning up human blood. How would you like to
yeah,
hear the story of that company? Um, Another one, puts up signs, but she's so incredibly enthusiastic when she gives her little presentation. She dances. So there's a lot of stuff out there. And if you can create a compelling story around it, you'll remember it. That's the whole idea of storytelling.
yeah.
How many ads have you seen? Really creative ones. And then afterwards you think, what was that about? What company is that referring to? And I think the crux of storytelling at a corporate level is to make your company memorable. When they think of Coca-Cola, they think of a
Yeah.
certain ad, but it's all clearly linked to the brand. And then I'll tell you something about our old place, EDS, because we really wanted to bond with employees, to have employees tell the story of the company. And I think we did a good job with that. So,
For those of you who don't know, Jeff was the head of global communications for EDS for a number of years. And so everything he's about to tell was done under his guidance.
under my watch.
Under your
uh,
watch, baby.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's start off. I'm going to go down a list of things that really are the hallmarks of storytelling. Well, why do you want to do this? Well, you're going to build an emotional connection with your base of employees, or what did we call them? Colleagues, I think, at EDS. You're going to differentiate your brand. We worked in a company or companies that it was different trying to differentiate the brand when you're running computer systems or supporting information initiatives, all that. So, for a lot of our employees, it would be hard to really explain what we did. So we challenged them on that. And then, you're simplifying complex ideas, encouraging brand advocacy, aligning your internal culture. If you're an employee of a 120,000 person company, it's really essential you get your employees on board, because if they're not on board, what's going to happen to your external communications? You want to have everyone being a brand advocate, and I think storytelling really helps that. You're boosting engagement and you're promoting long-term relationships. I can't think of anything more important than that from a company perspective. John, how do you want to run this? I've got a bunch of examples. I know you do too. Um, should we
Why
talk
don't
about
you?
those now or just
Yeah, let's. Why don't you throw out an example, and then I've got a couple, and we kind of go back and forth.
absolutely? So, hey, let's think of some that stand out. I'm sure all of you know Nike, and Nike's Just Do It campaign was amazing, and it was essentially a storytelling campaign. You never lost touch with the fact, oh, they're talking about Nike, and what can you do if you wear a pair of Nikes? And so there are the wonderful campaigns around that. My personal favorite campaign was with Coca-Cola. If you've seen us before, you know that I'm from Pittsburgh. And
Yeah,
if you think back to the 1970s, the icon of that steel curtain was a lineman named Joe Green, Mean Joe Green.
Mean
And he had
Joe,
a
baby.
reputation for being very mean.
Number 75.
Number 75, just a menace, a menace. So they did a commercial. I'm sure a lot of you have seen it, where Joe's coming off the field. He's sweaty, generally irritated looking, and there's a little boy in there, and what do you want, kid? And the kid hands him a Coca-Cola, and he swigs down the Coca-Cola, smiles, and throws the kid his jersey. So, can you think of a better story than that? It develops Joe as a person, with a heart, a huge heart. The kid is, just this kid who's a huge fan. How do you bond with him? And the thing that bonds them is a bottle of Coca-Cola. I love it, and that's a great story, and people remember that. And it even softened Joe Green's image. So that's super iconic if you think back to that. John, you have any you can think of that are?
Well, I would continue with Coke. So that ad came out in the, I'm going to say, the mid to late 70s,
Yeah,
and
thinking more mid.
and mid 70s. And what do they say? Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, right?
Right.
So I want to say it was 2009, Coke actually came out with a V2 of that, of that ad, a bit of a spoof, if you will, of that ad. At that time, the star defender, of the biggest star on the Steelers defense was Troy Polamalu, right?
Absolutely.
Uh, and who once wore this helmet behind me. He is a very proud Trojan. Fight on, Troy, right?
Oh, you don't
Uh,
stop. Yeah.
I can't help it. I can't help it. I'm obsessed. And the commercial was a Coke commercial, and here he comes off the field. He's sweaty, he's tired, and he ends up, and and the swap is about to happen, where the kid gives him the Coke and he throws him the jersey, but he is tackled by Coke brand managers, right in the middle of it, who because it was then an ad for Coke Zero, and the Coke brand managers were tackling him because he was going to talk about Coke Zero, but they were the brand managers for Coke, and they tackle him, they pile on him. Anyway, he gets up and he rips off the sport coat of one of these suits, one of these guys, and he tosses the guy's sport coat to the kid instead of the jersey. And so it was a way to continue to tell that story. But think about some of the other things Coca-Cola has done. Remember, I mean, going back to the 70s, what was the very, very famous ad? I think this was even earlier than Mean Joe, when they had all those people in that open field and they were singing, "I'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony." Thank you. Thank you. I was waiting for you to stop me. And
I wanted to hear the rest.
but but and the point is that this is sugar water. That's all it is, right? It's just sugar water. But Coca-Cola, I think, has done a really good job over time, over a long period of time, of sticking to its guns by building an emotional connection between the product and life, basically, with the way they've told their story. And now corporate storytelling is about so much more than ads and taglines, right? The key when you're telling a corporate story is, you got paid media, owned media, earned media, right? And paid media, advertising, Coca-Cola has done a great job over time of telling this type of story. I'm going to assume, I don't know the answer as I sit here right now, that they were consistent through owned media as well in telling that same type of story. Now, back in the 70s, there was no website, but nowadays, and then earned media in the PR that you pursue. And so, whatever your story is, you've got to arrive at it, stick to it, execute it consistently across all those forms of media. And I would argue that Coca-Cola has very likely done a good job of that over time. Do you want to tell a story next, or I've got one from personal experience?
Let me tell a quick one, and then you can go to personal experience. I was
Please.
watching the other night, and everyone knows the Super Bowl is the Super Bowl of commercials. It's $8 million for a 30-second spot. It's a lot of money. So you make the most of it. But I was watching the greatest Super Bowl commercials of all time show the other week. They run it every year.
I
But
love it.
Doritos has a history of good Super Bowl commercials. And some
Yeah.
storytelling, of course. They make the Doritos look delicious. But in this one, a guy goes into a room, he sits down, he opens a bag of Doritos, he breaks one apart and makes it the lure in a mousetrap rather than a piece of cheese. It's a piece of Dorito. And he puts it down and he just sits and watches. But in the meantime, he's hungry for a Dorito. So he takes out a big Dorito, crunches it, and a huge rat crashes through the wall, tackles him, and starts to punch him. And I just thought, you're never going to forget that commercial. Um,
Great.
I mean, what creativity. Well, that's just a fantastic commercial. And there are other ones out there over the years. Another one that sticks in my mind all the time, and it's not funny, this one. It's BASF. If you remember, that was from that same era. We don't make the products, but we make them better. And they're
Yeah.
showing all these things. And oh, our name isn't on it, but if we're part of it, it's going to be a good product. I always think of that too when I think of projects around branding. Well, do you make the product? No, but we do make it better, and you can trust us. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Clendenning again.
Well, you know what?
Step
You
of
know
my
what? That's a thank you for mentioning the BASF thing. That was a great campaign and a great story for them to tell. And that is actually a perfect segue into my example because it's a software example. And like a consumer product, a Dorito, a package of Oreos, a shoe, you see the thing on the shelf. What you don't see when it comes to companies like BASF and software, essentially, you don't see the product, and so you have to work really hard to bring that product to life because it's not something people can see or even really physically touch, right? So my example, I mean, we talked about Jeff running global communications for EDS, so many great storytelling examples from that experience. But there was a time at which they sold their software division to private equity. And then over time, and I went out the door with that. And I was their head of corporate marketing and communications for that business for many years. And then ultimately, Siemens came in and bought the business. But just think about this from a corporate storytelling standpoint. The business was a division of EDS, and it was called EDS PLM Solutions, $1 billion business. Okay, software business, product lifecycle management or PLM software, $1 billion piece of business, sold now. Well, now we had to go to market. We're independently private equity owned, but now we're going to market on our own, no longer part of EDS. So we couldn't be called EDS PLM Solutions. It didn't make any sense anymore, right? And so we had to come up with a new brand, which is not the purpose of this discussion. And long story, we ended up calling ourselves UGS. Okay, UGS, long story. But regardless of the change in the brand, we had to come up with a story. How do you bring PLM software to life for business buyers, right? At manufacturing firms, at car companies, et cetera. We went through an extensive process of building out that story. We interviewed employees. We interviewed clients. We interviewed industry analysts. We got a lot of feedback from a lot of different parties as to what makes us stand out, right, from other PLM software providers. And we landed on a tagline, which there's so much more to corporate storytelling than a tagline, but a tagline kind of encapsulates the whole thing in a matter of words. Our tagline was transforming the process of innovation. That's in the end what we decided we were going to hang our hat from. And every story we told for years thereafter, including when our name changed again, when we became part of Siemens, they changed our name to Siemens PLM Software. But the transforming the process of innovation for many years was the core of our corporate story, right? Yeah. And because in the end, that's what we do best. Hey, Mr. or Ms. Manufacturer, you buy our software and you use it in designing your products or designing your factories or what have you. In doing that, our solution will transform your process of innovation and essentially thus make enable you to make better products. So it's a little bit, Jeff, like BASF. We don't make the product. The software doesn't make the product. You as the manufacturer make the product, but we make your product better because of our software. It's much harder, in my view, for B2B companies to come up with these things than it is for B2C. That doesn't mean it isn't hard for B2C, but again, you can't see the technology, you can't see it, you can't touch it, right? So, and the other thing is we stuck to that story in terms of execution. Our, again, tagline is the tip of the iceberg, but our website was all about that story. Our ads were all about that story. Our PR outreach was all about that story. So again, across paid, owned, and earned media, we came up with the story. We stuck with it for years. And I will always believe, always, that our success in doing so helped drive our growth and thus helped us ultimately be a candidate for acquisition by Siemens, which paid a lot of money for us. We were sold in 2004 for $2.05 billion. So 2x earnings. Okay. At that point, it was the largest ever private equity purchase of a technology company. I'm sure it didn't take long for that record to be eclipsed, right? 3 years later, Siemens bought us for $3.65 billion. In 3 years, I'm loosely rounding, the value, the amount of money that somebody was willing to pay kind of sort of doubled in 3 years. Now, is that because of our corporate storytelling? Not exactly, but I believe it played a role because we were very clear and really disciplined about sticking to that story. And I will tell you this, there were many times I was the head of corporate marketing and communications and essentially the brand cop, which, by the way, is the least enjoyable role any of us will ever play in corporate marketing and communications. I was the brand cop. There were many times I had to fight people off internally. You've probably had to do that at EDS.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, isn't that story too old now? Can't we move on to a new story? There is art and science to everything we talk about, right? There is art in this, and there's science in terms of when is it time to update the story and or just move to a different story. That's a really tough call. But
yeah,
I would argue that companies more often veer too early from the story as opposed to holding on to it for too long, because it's too easy to get sucked into the internal morass of, I want to tell a different story. Oh, I want to do something different, right? Because everybody's an expert at branding. Everybody's an expert at advertising, so to speak. And a lot of people just want to do their own thing. And so we had to fight them off internally. You see these scars up here? Can you see my scars?
Brutal.
No, this is tough stuff. If you are a head of marketing or a head of communications, I would suspect that this is among the hardest things you're going to do. Build the story and stick with it, but don't stick with it forever. Know when it's time to move in a different direction. If you're going to move in a different direction, my hearty advice is make sure you get some outside counsel before you do that. Go out and revisit those conversations that you hopefully had up front when you developed a story in the first place. Go to clients, go to industry analysts, go to financial analysts, go to media that you trust. What do you think about our story? Is it resonating, right? Is it time to move to a different story, right? This is tough stuff, but it's also a lot of fun, right? Does that make sense, Jeff? As you can tell, I get a little fired up about this stuff.
Oh my God, we're gonna have to pour a bucket of water on you.
Yeah.
You're about to explode. No, and that's really, well, I've got some over here too, and it's still that same cup I was drinking earlier this morning at the Plano Chamber of Commerce meeting. My God. No, let me throw out one more example. I'll throw out two examples. Back in our days at EDS, and I think you were gone by then, John. We did a storytelling program where we basically said, tell the story of the company as an elevator speech that you can put on a 3x5
Yeah,
card and send it to us. And we're going to go through all those 3x5 cards to help develop our corporate messaging. And people in the executive suite thought we were stupid. They thought, what kind of crap is this? But the response was amazing. And we got all these cards back, and they weren't all jokes, they were sincere. What a great way to build a culture and unify your employees and show that you're listening to them. So that worked out great for us. But then you can go to the other side where you're not even telling your story. Someone just inadvertently tells a story that benefits you. And I don't know if, John, you feel this way, but I think we're at an age where Seinfeld was an important part of developing wisdom, strange beliefs, what have you.
absolutely.
And one of
100%.
my favorite episodes, back when I was working way back when I had dark hair, um, and was totally mobile, at Warner Lambert, a big consumer products company and pharmaceutical company. And one of our key products back then was Junior Mints. Everyone goes to the movie, they love Junior Mints, right? You get some popcorn, you get some dots, and you get some Junior Mints.
Oh,
There's an
dots.
episode of Seinfeld where
Dots. Best.
Jerry and Kramer are observing an operation in a little, it's almost like a theater room, but for medical students. Kramer's up front. He just can't wait till they splay this guy open. But he's eating Junior Mints as he's watching this, and he tries to give them to Jerry. And Jerry said, I don't want it. Oh, they're delicious. Here, I don't want any. And so Jerry bats this Junior Mint and it goes flying right down into his body cavity. They close up his body cavity, and then they find out the next day that he's developed this horrible infection. And the doctor said, but he just miraculously healed. And Jerry and Kramer and Elaine are looking at the doctor, saying, wow. He goes, it's almost like something came from above. And at that point, Kramer pulls out a box of Junior Mints and he goes, would you like a Junior Mint? And he goes, yeah, they're chocolatey, refreshing and delicious. And that was like a branding campaign and a great corporate storytelling. And our Junior Mint sales took off after that episode. So sometimes you do the good things, sometimes they come to you. And that's one of my favorite stories.
That's a great story. You're right. I mean, sometimes they come to you. But you know what? Sometimes they come to you. What do you do about it? That's the question. Do you sit there and leave it be, or do you leverage it for all it's worth? These days, right? That
Mm-hmm.
was 90s if it was Seinfeld. These days, something like that happens. What's the first thing that you should be doing? You should be putting it all over social media. All over
Absolutely.
social media. You should be going to the
Absolutely.
press. Everything you can do to milk that for all it's worth. That's a great story.
Well, and there's one more now that you've set me loose on this. Way back in those Warner Lambert days, we had a great director of marketing communications, very creative, very outgoing. And a certain morning, one of our main competitors, and I won't tell you the name of it, put out a thing on the most kissable celebrities. And they had who the most kissable was, who the least kissable was. And
Mm,
uh, and I'll tell you, it was for a certain mouthwash brand. And
mm,
last on the list at this point, she was way less controversial. She was so popular, was Rosie O'Donnell. And we went to her, and Nancy, who was our head of marketing communications, went to the show and said, we think this is terrible. You're very kissable. What if everyone who comes on your show who kisses you um, gets you get money from us from Listerine, our brand, and you can set into your charity or whatever. And it became this great campaign. Everyone came on
brilliant.
the show, kissed her,
Brilliant.
and they showed a picture of Listerine on the screen. What a great story that is. And so again, sometimes you fall into things, and it's the intentionality, which John likes to talk about. Our intent was to build our brand. Listerine was a huge brand, but this was our main competitor trying to outdo us, and it backfired on them. So, uh, that to me, that's one of the most memorable stories I know.
I think that's fantastic. Um, I guess I can think of one other one, Unisys, right? So I took over global communications for Unisys in 2016. And at that point, Unisys really, and I think this is fair to say, Unisys didn't really have much of a corporate story at that point. They had started to lead with cybersecurity because they had a particular expertise in that discipline, but they hadn't formally rallied their corporate storytelling around it. So a team that I was involved in, we went out and did due diligence on what should the new Unisys corporate story be. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we talked to employees, we talked to industry analysts, we talked to clients, all sorts of people. And it came back that, yes, we think you as a company do have an opportunity here to differentiate yourself around cybersecurity, right? And so we did that. We executed a fairly extensive marketing and communications program around security as our core. A great example of how we followed that up with execution over time was at that point, now it's call it 2017, we brought back the Unisys Security Index, which Unisys had started years before, but had let it go. It was dormant for several years. We brought it back because it was a global survey around cybersecurity that we could sponsor, opened up huge opportunities for PR outreach, for client and prospect conversations, for demand generation. We built a landing page on our website, all sorts of stuff, all to promote Unisys's leadership in all things cybersecurity, right? But that all started with, what is your story, right? And so we executed that for years. And in 2017, when we reintroduced the Unisys Security Index, we generated, and this is a company that had lost a lot of awareness in the market. We generated the highest level of media coverage in the history of the company. And that all started with the corporate story and subsequent brainstorms on how can we develop some campaigns, programs, activities, et cetera, to promote that story being that Unisys is a leader in cybersecurity. So we could go on and on. I could talk about corporate storytelling all day. Maybe move toward recap. Jeff, what do you think?
Oh, well, based on your story about the security index, I was working the agency world at that point, and we were
Right.
working directly for John. And our idea was, what if we have a press conference and roll it out there? And it was at the
Right.
National Press Club in Washington. We
Yep.
worked an exclusive story ahead of it with Axios, which is really well respected. And
Yep.
we ended up with huge coverage. And I got but I got a security expert who worked for CBS News, who was a professor, to come in and talk to the folks who came to the briefing about the issue of corporate security in terms of cybersecurity. The thing was huge, huge.
Huge.
It was picked up by one of the syndicates, which hit the Miami Herald and
McClatchy.
papers around the country.
McClatchy, one of the biggest news syndicates.
Mhm.
That was all you and your team at Hill and Knowlton that did that.
Yeah, so that was a great success story, but it's a perfect execution of something that makes a lot of sense. And
Yep.
a little aside, when we met up at the building for the National Press Club, there was a Starbucks in the basement. And right before it all started, I spilled a whole cup of coffee on myself. So
I remember that we were in line together.
yeah, it
That's
was
funny.
early. It was
That's
early.
funny. It was early. The pressure was on. So yeah, no, you're right. So to recap, what does a corporate story do for an organization? And I would argue this is relevant whether you are a mom and pop or a small to mid-sized business or a larger enterprise. First of all, it defines what your brand is all about. And it does so in a way that, if done right, differentiates you from your competition, right? It also serves as a unifying force for all new content development. If whatever new content you're developing, you have to stick with the story, right? And when you do that, obviously you're going to market in a consistent way, right? And hopefully, by the way, globally, not just doing it in one place and doing it differently somewhere else, right? And Jeff makes great points on the value of doing this internally as well. It serves as an internal rallying cry, and often can lead to increases in engagement, which is hugely important. So, if you are on a marketing team or a communications team, here are the challenges that we would pose for you. Do you have a corporate story? If so, does it need to be updated? Is it resonating? To what extent is it resonating in the market? And by the way, how do you even determine that? Are you measuring? Are you measuring quantifiably the degree to which it's resonating in the market? Are you doing a pre-post? Did you do a pre? Did you set the benchmark for progress going forward by setting the benchmark before you went out with the new story? Right. Because only then can you compare how you did when you go in later and do essentially the post, right? Your employees, Jeff, I love the index card thing, right? To what extent are your employees telling the same story consistently? Internally among themselves and externally. It's the whole cocktail party thing. You're at a cocktail party. Oh, hi, my name's Joe. What do you do? Well, I work for blah, blah. Okay, well, what are you going to say for the next 15 seconds before the guy decides to go get another martini, right? Because he's bored with what you're saying, or you don't really know, right? So to what degree are people telling this story consistently? And this is more than a tagline. I mean, the way this plays out to me is through what I like to call brand architecture. You should have a corporate story. You should have a story for each main product or solution. And then you have to tie all of that together. That's where the architecture comes in. Nothing should be inconsistent with anything else in your ecosystem, if you will, in terms of the story. It should all work together. I mean, I guess that's kind of it, right? And then, like I said, once you've built it and are executing, or at least beginning to execute, then it's all about discipline. It's all about discipline and sticking with it for a decent period of time. I would argue that, and I've learned this from market research people that know way more about this than I do, but if you're going to do a pre-post, you need to wait at least 9 months to do the post, right? Probably longer. A lot of people measure things like this on a preset schedule on an annual basis. You could do it that way, but you don't necessarily, I would argue, have to wait that long to do it. You can measure at least campaigns on a shorter time frame. So discipline, 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 execution, execution, execution. Is it an interesting story? Is it compelling? Is it differentiating? And can it stand the test of time as best you can tell when you first build it, right? Time will tell over time, but these are the things you have to take into account. You may hear all this stuff back from all the people you ask for their opinions about, but it could be a Me Too story. So why are you any different than anybody else, right? It's got to be differentiating and it's got to be compelling. Otherwise, the content is not going to be interesting. And if it's not interesting, it's not going to get you where you need to be.
No,
any final comments, Jeff, on corporate storytelling?
Well, I'll give you first. I'm not a genius. John will tell you that.
I
And there were a
think,
lot of other people, and especially at EDS, who were involved in that. We had a great internal communicator named Springfield Lewis who executed the program for us. Did a wonderful
yep,
job. There was an
yep.
outside group we relied on from the UK that came to us and really gave us the idea of doing this. So we built it from the ground up. It was grassroots storytelling, and it made employees feel good that we were taking their stories and making it part of our corporate messaging. So that's really all I have to say here. I just think we really made the culture much more inclusive, much more reflective of what people were saying. And it gave us some great new ideas, which that's always important. So that's pretty much it. And if you want our perspective on a regular basis, give us a call. Clients First, Marketing and Communications, LLC. You can go to our website and all the social channels that we use. Please go visit them. John, you want to take it away from here?
Yeah, and we're nothing at Clients First if not sports fans, right? So yes, we remain distraught about Luka. I will decide about covering up the Mavs logo on the quarter zip. But let's give ourselves, before we sign off here, Jeff, one last chance to get this right. Super Bowl Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
You got the Chiefs, you got the Eagles. We thought it was going to be the Bills. We were very, very wrong. I'm giving each of us another chance to rescue our self-respect. What's your call?
Okay, I've got really mixed feelings on this, as I'm sure you know. Being a Penn Stater, the fact
Uh,
that Saquon Barkley has had the season that he's had, and I know for sure he's a good guy. Um, so it's hard for me to root against Saquon, but I'll be rooting for Saquon, get 200 yards in the game. But ultimately, I'd love to see the Chiefs three-peat. And I've heard a story that if they win, there's a chance that Travis Kelce could propose to Taylor Swift on the field.
what?
Yes, I've heard this. I don't know if there's any
Really?
truth. Oh, absolutely. I want to see
Wow.
if that plays out. I want to see if that plays out and what happens to the world after that. A storybook romance, football, it all comes together. It's a huge story. But I've got to say, go Chiefs.
If that, I had not heard that, by the way. If
I
that
heard, I
happens,
heard it.
the
Excuse me.
post-game coverage will be about the proposal and not about the game itself.
Well, that could take away from the cachet of the game, but hey, it's building the sport. And I think the sport's pretty well built to begin with, but takes us away from the struggles of daily life and all the other horrible things in the news.
Yes, including the Luka trade.
God, number
Don't get
one.
me started. Don't get
Number
me started.
one.
So you know how I much prefer it when we disagree because I think it's much more fun. So I really don't care who wins, honestly. I just want it to be a close and exciting game. I'm going to go Eagles only because um, they played the Chiefs in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, gave them a hell of a battle.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
but what they didn't have then, they have now, which is your guy, your Penn Stater Saquon. Right? I just think he is
It's incredible.
unbelievable. I think he's going to be the MVP. The Chiefs have won a lot of games this year, but many of those have involved squeaking by people.
Majority
I
of
think,
involved
I
squeaking.
think, yeah, I think it's going to be a good game, but I think the Eagles are going to pull it out in the end and give the many Eagles fans I know, being ex-Unisys based in Philly, a chance to cheer. The Eagles fans of Philadelphia are beyond passionate. Can you
They're
imagine?
mean. They're
Can you
mean.
imagine if the Mavericks were based in Philadelphia and had done what they did with Luka with Philly fans? Are you kidding me?
The city would be on fire.
the city, the city would be on fire. So, uh, good luck, Mavs, tomorrow, I guess. If you're still even the Mavs, let's make sure everybody not to burn the arena down tomorrow. Of course, by the time you all see this, we will know what happened, not only outside of the arena in Dallas, but in the Super Bowl. So we look forward to our next opportunity to talk with you a couple of weeks after you see this. And Jeff is right. We are here to help. Visit us on our social channels. Please, 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 if you enjoy this content, Follow us on
Repost it.
on LinkedIn, repost it, share it with your friends. We do have a lot of fun with this, and we hope you do too as you consume this content. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. And we'll determine whether we're eating cheesesteaks next week if Philadelphia wins, or barbecue from Kansas City. I'm
That's
okay
right.
either way.
I'm okay either way. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, see ya.